we are back at the Sacramental Charismatic podcast, and today we're going to be having a conversation with Jeanine Blount, and I'm really thankful that Jeanine is here. Jeanine, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for...
Yeah. So I first met you in 2009. I mean, I was aware of you, obviously. I knew,
famous.
Yeah, I knew who you were. But I met you in 2019 in Denver, Colorado, when I was scapegoated and forced into participating in a women in ministry conversation. I was deemed the
something.
Yeah. I don't even know what that was, but I was the guy. I just know I was the token male.
You were the token guy.
That's
how does it feel, Luke?
It was terrible. I will be completely honest with you. It was terrible.
Yeah.
But I do remember, I was very impressed with your contribution to that conversation, because I was like, I felt like it was really encouraging. There were a lot of women at that. And we were in the process of planting a Vineyard Church at that time, because my friend Nikki Wolter was there on the panel as well, and she was so she was our kids pastor, associate pastor, and then she abandoned us and left us and went and started her own. I'm still very bitter. I say that all the time. But at any rate, it was really encouraging, just because there were so many women that came out at that panel. And I was really encouraged by what I heard from the different respondents. And so I've been a fan of you from a distance, and obviously Brian is deeply loved in the movement. And we're going to get to the bottom of how you have survived, though, that crazy man today.
It's an adventure. It's an adventure being Mrs. Blount.
Yeah, I bet. And you have a whole bunch of kids as well.
Adult kids, but yes. So ages 18 to 25, we've got 6 of them, and 4 here. Yeah.
Crazy. Because we have 5, and I always think we're the craziest, but it's really encouraging to find out that we're not the craziest. So
I'm sure Brian said this when he was with you as well, but we didn't intend to have 6 kids. Our last was a set of triplets. So that's been an adventure. Yeah.
No one intends it. Let's just be honest.
No.
Well, maybe Roman Catholics. Maybe Roman Catholics do. Yeah. So, before we jump in, I'd love to just ask you, kind of maybe just briefly, your journey, how'd you came to faith? And then, you serve as the senior pastor at a Vineyard Church in Oklahoma. Maybe just let us know a little bit about yourself. What are the important things to know?
Well, we already covered the most important ones. I love Jesus, right? Let's clear that up. That's the most, right? Married to Brian, 6 kids. I grew up in a Christian home. I kind of don't remember not knowing and loving Jesus, but I do have a vague memory of being at a VBS when I was, I think, 4 years old, and kneeling down and praying a prayer. So I kind of mark that, but I don't have much memory before that of ever feeling like I wasn't, a follower of Jesus. And so, and never had a rebellious streak, never strayed. I love Jesus. I love the church. Church was like a second home. Growing up, my family is a wonderful, charmed upbringing that I had. And grew up with this weird blend of Pentecostal and Methodist.
Okay.
My first years were Pentecostal. Both of my parents' families are Pentecostal. And when I was around 9-ish years old, various factors led to my parents switching to Methodist church. Now, I must say with a caveat, our Methodist church was maybe not what many people would think of Methodist church, that the senior minister was the former dean of theology from Oral Roberts University. So we had a lot of Oral Roberts professors, Oral Roberts faculty that was also church faculty. So I was really shaped and formed through my teen years under those voices with a weird mix of Methodism and Pentecostalism.
Wow.
And yeah, right.
Yeah. A lot of similarities, but by now, very different.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rewind the clock 150 years ago, a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
Today, not so much, right? There's a holiness root, but um yeah, so then my personal experience was like in my church, there was teaching on the gifts of the spirit, but I was a very introverted child. I have this paradox in me where I seek aloneness and the introverted side of me, and yet my entire life it feels like God's pushed me to the front, whether I wanted to
Mm,
or not. I was very comfortable at a very young age being on a stage, musical influences in my family and performing in the music side of things. And we attended a very large church, so that would often involve me being in front of very large numbers of people. Um, but all that to say, like, so I have these things that feel like contradictions in my life. Like, I um, really wanted these experiences of the Holy Spirit, but like, and I would pray for that, but nothing really seemed to happen. But
mm,
I
okay.
loved and trusted Jesus that like, well, he's giving me whatever he needs to give me. And so then when Brian and I were dating, a long story that I think he may have told you on his podcast, ended up at a vineyard church. So I would have been 19, 20
Mhm.
years old. And suddenly I felt like my two worlds kind of come together in a way that makes sense for me
Mm,
here. They love the Holy Spirit. They're praying for healing. They're speaking in tongues. They're doing all the stuff that my Pentecostal roots did, right?
mhm.
But like they make sense. They talk real talk. They don't hype things up, which I like about the Methodist side of things.
Yeah.
And so it really felt like a coming together of the things that I had valued in my church experiences up to that point.
Wow. So what kinda was the radical middle in a sense then
It
for
was.
you? It was the
Yeah.
convergence of those. Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. Wow. So so basically, you kinda grew up in this environment where faith was a big part of your childhood and, you've kind of, lived that a life where Jesus was the center, and you knew about the things of the kingdom and all that type of stuff. That's cool, that's cool. So, okay, so I'm kinda curious. So Brian, this larger than life personality
Yeah.
and, you know yeah,
Yeah.
like, I didn't wanna like Brian. That was I think I told him, I was like, "Oh, I just assumed you were probably one of them, crazy, non-theology wackos." And then I met him and I was like, "I can't help but like this guy. He's so likable." And now I love so much of what he's doing, and, I just appreciate his voice. But he got into ministry, pretty early on. Was that kinda your journey, or were
Yeah.
you raising kids
Actually,
and
mhm. Yeah, the place that we met was through a Methodist youth retreat kind of thing that he and I were both leading in. And
Okay,
so we met at a team training. So yes, I he and I were both involved in our little Methodist sphere of ministry from time we were teenagers. Yeah.
okay. So, I guess, like, help me understand or help us understand, like, your journey into leadership sounds like it was
Mhm.
pretty early on then. I mean, it wasn't, like, a couple years ago.
Yeah. It's well, I'll say it this way. Like I said, the church that I grew up in was a very large church, and yet, when they would have like the annual youth day or whatever, there was multiple times that I was the one up there giving, the little brief message or testimony, and so speaking in front of several thousand people, kind of came for me, right? By the way, my church is not several thousand people, so I'm not speaking in front of several thousand people
Yeah.
anymore. Um, but
But
like
you have and you're ready.
yeah, I did once when I was 15 years old,
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
And
So
then
you've grown the church down from thousands to
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And then, also, when I was in my high school, in my school, there was this Christian club, and there was, my junior year, there was one day that I didn't go to it, like, it was I think it was twice a week. The one time that I didn't go to it, they were doing elections for the president for the next year, and I wasn't even there, and I was did the
Oh,
president for my junior and senior year of
that
this
is the way
club.
to do it.
I know, right? And so it's exactly that kind of thing. Like I shouldn't even say I haven't sought leadership. I've been reluctant to
Mm,
be in places of leadership. And yet it's just kept happening through my life. And I finally, near 50 years old, figured out I need to probably just surrender to that. you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Um, yeah, I wasn't looking for it, and it happened. Same thing when I went to college. I had a lot of really great musical teachers and worship and voice formation in my teen years. And so by the time I get to college, I'm on a campus ministry and I'm the one leading campus wide worship, and
Mm,
um, yeah. And then we joined the vineyard, and our pastor Charles is not long before he's like, "Hey, Jeanine, can you teach this? Hey, Jeanine, can you lead this?" I ended up being the worship leader at the church, and just bit by bit, piece by piece, as I was asked to do things. Honest, I was just trying to serve. Like there was a spot that needed to be filled, like, oh, I'll do it just because I want the church, because I love the church, and
yeah.
turns out like if you do that for a few decades, you end up sometimes being a pastor.
Yeah. So what year did you kind of come into the vineyard? Like, do you remember what year that was?
Yeah, we got married in '97, so it was '96 when we were
Okay.
introduced to the vineyard, and our church had been really affected by Toronto, and so they were kind of on the tail ends of that experience of the Spirit when we got there, and so talking to the people who had been around at that time, it was kind of like it's kind of waned or whatever, but to us we were like, this is great, it was
Yeah.
like this is
Yeah. Yeah.
what great,
So you
yeah,
came into the vineyard at the time when nationally women's ordination and women's leadership was soft complementarian would be,
yeah,
the technical term.
yeah,
Was I guess what did that look like for you? Did you because it sounds like you kind of naturally were the reluctant leadership's like such a great phrase because I feel like that's been my gift in leadership is I've always been good at recognizing the reluctant leaders.
yeah,
Everybody that I've oftentimes it's been like, no, you can. I feel like that's been God's calling in my life to tell people, no, you can, because I recognize gifting or whatever. And they're always super reluctant. And they make the
yeah,
best leaders, by the way.
yeah,
Reluctant leaders, best leaders.
yeah.
And, so did you wrestle through that or did you kind of grow up thinking, oh, yeah, of course I can? My gender doesn't play a part of that
Mhm. Yeah, because I had grown up in the Methodist church, I had seen women ministers, that whole time, and then also even in my Pentecostal side of things, had seen
yeah.
women. And so it's not something that I had theologically wrestled with, as a 19-year-old when we walked into the vineyard. However, I did, um, like, feel it and notice it, like, "Oh, there's no women up there." And somewhere in that first year of us, getting to know and being mentored by our, pastor, Charles Bellow, I remember sitting in his office and saying, like, "So, why don't you have any women?" And, he said something that I think was more of a prophetic voice than a actual answer to my question. He said, "Well, maybe it's because you need to be the one up there doing it." And I was like, I
Mm,
was just taken aback. Like that, that doesn't answer my
yeah.
question, But it acknowledged he was acknowledging that there needed to be a place for women,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think at the same time affirming what he was seeing in me, whatever that was at the time. Uh, and so he was always supportive of me. I think he went through his own wrestling theologically of women in general in ministry, but that didn't stop him from supporting me while he was wrestling through it, you know?
Wow,
Which
yeah. I mean, that sounds very similar to Wimber in some ways, right? Like,
yeah,
where Wimber
yeah,
was super inconsistent is the phrase I've used to describe, it's like, I'm hanging out with Wayne Grudem a lot, and I think the Bible says I mean,
yeah,
fair being fair, I think the Bible says men should be, the elders. Meanwhile, like, I'm not gonna stop when I sense the Holy Spirit, calling women to lead because he was inconsistent, historically. But yeah, interesting. So I guess I would love to like dive into the topic of women in leadership because I was sharing before we got started, like there's this, there's been a number of women I've been trying to get to be on this podcast, and I oftentimes get the dodge. I call it the dodge, for a variety of reasons where I think it'd be good to talk about, but, um, you know, wanting to, so having, we have a lot of female leaders in our church. My wife and I co-lead. She's on a leave of absence though right now. She's enjoying the sanctity of sabbatical.
Good.
Um, but we've got, yeah, I mean, I think there's three female pastors in our church, and we've planted a church that is led by a female. Um, and so there's a lot of women in the vineyard, and I think in charismatic churches in general that are, sensing a call. There is probably for a lot of other females, a lot of other women, there is more of a wrestling that happens,
Hmm.
from what I've gathered. And like, let's just talk about that. What are some of the key issues? What are some of the challenges, that are connected to that, maybe biblically, theologically, and practically?
Well, I'll just start with the practical side, just because it's what's freshest on my mind by being prompted by the things that you were saying. Um, I, uh, I'm gonna botch the numbers, so don't quote me on the numbers. But a year or two ago, the Women's Association did a survey of the women who are solo lead pastors in the vineyard.
Mhm.
There's, I'll say, 33 or so of us, and we came. And one of it, like several of the questions were pointing to, like, how did you come into this role? Was this a planned transition? Is this a church plant? Was this a crisis, transition? Or, what happened? And the number of women who are currently leading vineyard churches as solo lead pastors who were not planning to be in that role and suddenly are in that role is uncomfortably high. Um,
Okay.
because one, I think there's a few factors, not all on the practical side. And maybe this is me projecting some of this. So let me switch to my how I personally have wrestled with this. I don't care to be in charge of anything. Like, I wanted to support my husband. I wanted to serve my church the best way I could. And so for me, that was, I had to have, and I did have, like, an encounter with the Lord encountered me, not the other way around. I didn't encounter He encountered me to have the gumption to say, I think maybe, probably, maybe I might be called to co-lead this with my husband, right? And then we co-led for a number of years. And I think there's a number of great benefits at the time that Brian and I co-led together, but one of them being, and he's said this to me many times as well, like, I would have never said yes to pastoring a church if I hadn't done it side by side with my husband
Hmm.
and grown in the confidence and grown in the fortitude that it takes and the
Mhm.
gumption that it takes,
Yeah.
without co-leading with him. So all of that to say, I think some of the practical things are just culturally, we tend to be more wired to we just want to serve, and often that's, estrogen and testosterone are different. Men are more geared to go get the thing, and um, now I'm going to start sounding awfully complimentarian, but I'm not.
Yeah. No, this is
like,
great.
like
Keep going. You're making me
I
look
know. It's
so
like
good.
I think as the church becomes wrestles with these topics and becomes more egalitarian, you have to also then recognize there's real differences between men and women. Like, God made us different, and those very differences may be, in fact, hiding and veiling women who are extraordinary leaders, but culturally, biologically, familially, there's a bazillion factors that affect a woman's just go out there and I'm going to pastor a church. I'm going to go do it. And then she waits until she's 49 years old, like me, to eke her way
Hmm.
through a posture of, I just want to serve, not I want to lead. Not that not that one is better than the other. It's just, it's part of the differences in the way God designed us. And if
Yeah.
we're truly championing an egalitarian way of going about it, we have to recognize that many of these women are not, well, like what you said earlier, the ones that aren't seeking it are usually the best ones, right? And so learning to look at
Yeah.
women a little differently.
Yeah. I think that is actually quite, helpful. Because I think that the development of the biblical theology and the practical questions and issues that arise, are still, ongoing. Like, I don't think we've solved it, but that's kind of what, I think my has it. So I've always kind of like my development or process of becoming an egalitarian, was because I still hate that phrase. I think that
Yeah, not a
I,
great,
I
yeah.
yeah, I
Either
love
term is adequate. Yeah.
but I've always loved like, I like the word complementarian just because I like that idea of complementing each other,
Compliment.
you know?
Yes, we can
Yeah,
compliment, like, honor the differences, and because
yeah,
of the differences, we need both voices.
yeah. Yeah, but it's also too, it's like even the danger of having a conversation about this and using generalizations is obviously that they are generalizations, right? Because like there are some females that fall into some of the categories that get assumed to be, oh, that's a guy, and then there's because I've like my wife is a perfect example of how she's your I think the generalization of her being more like soft and more reserved and more, she's an
Yeah,
introvert, and she's
yeah,
she's so good with people. Like, she is she is a way better pastor, like when it comes to that word pastor and
yeah,
shepherd and
yeah.
caring and you know, and so like it's been a challenge a bit because people, when they hear the word pastor, they assume preacher or they assume, CEO or whatever other unhealthy concept is exported onto that phrase. And it's been like, we've had to work hard to like, let's really unpack what that word means. So like, yeah, I think that those are some pretty big there's a book called I think it's called The Gender Knot. It's not written by a Christian. I think it's just from like a sociological concept, but about the unraveling of patriarchy, and it raises all these other issues, and I think that's kind of what I've seen as being something we're still like wrestling with, because the concept of egalitarianism is not gender based, it's gift based, right?
Yeah,
And if we're
right?
going to come at it from a gift based, then it means that we get to talk about all the gifts, of the Spirit and how they're
Mhm,
all needed. Like, isn't that like the implications of 1 Corinthians 12 is like we need all of them, right? Not just one or two.
mhm.
So for you, like, so some of the practical observations you've had about in the vineyard movement is that the majority of senior pastors who are females kind of reluctantly or came into that role not with the intention of like, I'm going to go get an MDiv. I want to become a pastor. Yeah,
Ex
that's interesting. So
Yeah.
so what do you like? What's your conclusion you draw from that? Is what do we need to do to? Is that something we need to change, or is yeah, I guess somebody's like, what's your point, Janine?
Point. What are you trying to say? Um, I think it's just good data to as a data point for now. I think it's also a good marker for 5 years from now. Has that changed?
Mm, yeah.
Um, uh, because we as a vineyard, we've been moving the ball on this, right? Like we are in process, and we're a lot different than we were, say, 5 years ago before the association officially started, and then 5 years before that, before whatever it's called for the women's something,
Mhm.
before it was the women's association. We're moving the ball, so I think it's a good data point to like ask later, like, are we making more progress in women who are leading? Not that there's anything wrong with not being intentional and accidentally being a
Yeah,
pastor.
absolutely. I mean, because
It's
I
a
would say
personality.
there is a lot of men who that's exactly their story
Absolutely,
too. Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
I literally was just on the phone before we were talking. I'm coaching a friend who's in the process of like reluctantly
Yeah,
stepping into the senior pastor role,
yeah.
and he's like, I didn't plan on that, and so so obviously it's not but it is common, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it is common, and I think it's also because if there is a vacuum in a church for whatever reason, a senior leader is resigning, like, I think there's a number of stories of these women who, like, I'm not going to let this die. Like, I'm
Yeah.
going to step
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
and do it, right? Like, if no one else is going to do it, I'm going to do it. And yeah, I mean, I think it says something about just, and maybe that's the nurturing side again, broad
Mm.
generalities of women. Like, I
Hmm.
don't want to see something that I love and God loves dies, you know.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
if it's even me, I'll say
Mm.
yes, you know.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and may it be so, right? Like we need more nurturing. We need more mothers, right? I mean, that's like I want I think that's a good thing. So okay, so my observation, I was talking about one of the practical challenges, and maybe we can speak to the, or you could speak to this,
Yeah,
is so I'm like, hey, there's a lot of very gifted, extremely experienced, um, influential female leaders. And I've noticed that when I'm like, hey, would you be interested in coming on the pod?
yeah,
They're like, nah, I'm good.
huh?
and, uh,
Yeah,
and so my thinking is, I think, again, generalization, it seems like females are often, women are oftentimes more hesitant to maybe enter into that, put myself out there. Whereas guys are like, yeah, I'd love to fix it. I'd love to tell you.
absolutely.
Yeah. And then there's like the differences between, men are more interested in things, or, like the type A personality, like give our opinion on everything, and females are oftentimes more nurturing, more concerned about people and relationships. Um, and so I think that probably bears in too. But I also wonder if it's like, if I'm a female leader, if I'm a woman leader, if I put myself out there, I'm going to have to read all these comments of people on the Vineyard Theology forum who are like, the worst decision the Vineyard ever made. You've seen these
I
too. I
know.
know you have.
Oh, I know. I
And
stay away from it. I know.
yeah, like, no, like I'm doing, God has been working in my life because I have not engaged in calling those people out because I just want to, like, you're an idiot. But and so if you put yourself out there like you're doing right now, I can guarantee some person is going to be super arrogant and super demeaning, and like, oh no, I didn't know that Paul wrote First Timothy 2. Thank you for clarifying that, because we don't
Right.
have good responses to that.
I didn't read my whole
Yeah,
Bible.
yeah, exactly.
Maybe I need to
The
go back and get that MDiv again.
Yeah, thank you. You said it. Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it, right? So but I also wanna, I mean, I don't know, like, I don't wanna ask anybody to put themselves into a situation where they have to deal with something that they're not comfortable dealing with, or but I mean, I think you and I both, like, there are really good biblical theological resources today that we
100%.
have, right? I mean, it's like, I'm like, please, let's have that conversation.
Yep.
Like, I
Yeah.
would love to.
Please.
What do you think about that as a is that part of the challenge as a woman
Not
leader?
wanting to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I had this experience of, so this would have been in 2019, at after a, well, actually, I back to back, I'd gone to a retreat weekend for a cohort that I was starting with the Vineyard. And I was with a group of women. So that had happened. And then back to back after that, I went to uh, the theological, what was it called? The group that used to meet.
I
the
don't know. I didn't know we had one.
Society of Vineyard Scholars.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay. I have been to that.
And just a number of things that had happened over the course of that week and a half or whatever, I started feeling my femaleness in a really uncomfortable way. And so I sat down and I wrote something. I was just writing for myself about all of the weird, awkward, uncomfortable things about being a female pastor or leader. And I just wrote it and I sent it to my husband. He's like, you need to post this on Facebook. So I
Oh,
did.
no. And you
And
did?
and
Oh
then it
my
got shared
gosh.
onto some of these forums, right? And they're like, she's just so insecure. She just needs to grow up. And I'm like, ah. So yeah, I mean that's real. I think because I've been through that, like
Hmm.
like you don't go on Facebook. Just don't
Yeah.
look at at least that's my tactic. Maybe it's not
The
the best
solution
tactic,
is,
but that's my tactic. Like
yeah, the
I'm
solution is don't read the comments.
right.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe that is a good piece of advice just because it's like, okay, for, every one of those dudes that, is, convinced that this is the gospel issue of the moment,
Yeah.
there's 10 women, I'm making that number up, who need to be encouraged to know that they can lead. And obviously, like, I think that is the argument from a evangelical egalitarian. It's like, if God's called you and gifted you, you should respond to that with yes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think also, okay, so now we're gonna get on one of my soapboxes. I think
Yeah,
part
stand
of
up, do it. Yeah.
part of my growth and resilience to some of those comments, and I think an area that many women need to grow is that theological side. Like one of the things that I've noticed, because I'm part of the mentoring team in in the Women's
Mm,
Association, and so we do mentoring for women leaders, and a constant frustration that I have that tends to come up, just, every time I'm leading a group, it comes up, just realizing, typically women who are younger than me, um, maybe they grew up in a church, vineyard church or not, where, women could lead, and they just haven't wrestled with the text, and they know they can quote the big, the big ones, and therefore it's solved. Right. I'm like, no, 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 because you don't realize how much of what you're coming to is actually from secularism, not because
mhm,
you've actually wrestled with the text. And that's people talk about the slippery slope of women in leadership. The slippery slope isn't women leading. The slippery slope is not using your Bible to do the research and bringing you to conclusions that are maybe biblical conclusions or maybe not, but you're getting to it in a way more secular or worldly way than you think you are by not
mm,
doing the work, coming to the right conclusions, in my opinion, right?
yeah,
Uh, my
you're
opinion.
correct.
Otherwise, I
You're
wouldn't be going
correct.
over.
Yeah.
Like coming to the right conclusions, but you can't argue both sides. You can't stand in front of a complementarian fellow pastor in your neighborhood and sit down and have coffee together and not have to go toe to toe, but not feel intimidated either, and be able to respect their position, honor that they're trying to love Jesus and the Bible and serve the city just as much as you are, and come to different conclusions. And if you haven't done your homework to be able to both know why we're egalitarians and respect those who aren't, who
Mhm.
come to it in a
Yeah.
legit
Oh,
way, not
that's
an
good.
inherited way, just like the air on the other side.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, so just for a couple minutes here, let's talk about some of those resources. I have a
Yep.
lot of my books right next to me
Yeah.
that I'm really excited about looking at.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to know, like, for you, what are my journey, and that's why I actually love what you just said because I wanted to be an egalitarian. I really did. I have 5 younger sisters. God has blessed me with 3 of my 5 children are women. I have only it's like God has I'm married, I have a mom, I have lots of aunts.
Yeah.
like I have just been around women a lot. And I had seen a lot of phenomenal female leaders.
Yeah.
I went to my MDiv was in a environment that was complementarian. I was trained by the standard default position, and I was that. And it wasn't until I realized that I had only read a particular theological approach to the subject, all from complementarians, that I was like,
Yeah.
hey, maybe I need to look into that. And the first book I read was honestly not convincing. And it was like very much well, Paul, we know that those weren't inspired, or like, just ignore those texts. It didn't hold to the same biblical approach to scripture
Yeah.
for me.
Not
Right. Yeah.
helpful.
And so, yeah, I just was like, well, that's not going to do it. And then it was like 2 years later, I started reading, like, and we'll mention some of these books, but like Craig Keener. I read some Fee. I read Michael Bird. I started really, like top notch biblical scholars who, provided a really helpful framework for me. So like, I think what you're saying is really good. Like you can reach conclusion. I mean, I think the best, exegesis, the best socio cultural analysis of what we know about like Ephesus when it comes to First Timothy 2, I think leads me to to an egalitarian perspective. So like what resources do you generally recommend? Like what are the books, like what are the top 3 to 5 books that somebody needs to right now go on Amazon and click the links at the bottom of this description, purchase those, I get affiliate links and I get free gift cards from Amazon. Okay. Boom. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. What are they?
Okay. You're gonna I don't know if this answer is going to be amusing or not, but so yesterday, because I knew you had sent this question to me, yesterday I was at my church office. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna pull these books off of my desk, so off of my
Yeah.
shelf, so I can bring them home and have them. And I forgot. Okay, this is where I'm totally going as female as I can go with you on this one.
Okay.
I have menopause brain. Like I like the last few days, especially, like I can't remember
Mm,
people's names. And so you're asking me these book names. I'm like, I could go on Amazon and see the no. Like, okay, Andrew Bartlett is the one that I read recently.
oh,
Ask
cool.
me, I can't think of it.
Yeah, I'll find
Yeah,
them.
read Fee. Yes, I've read Keener. Keener's just I wouldn't give him to a beginner, right?
Yeah,
Um, the Andrew Bartlett one is pretty easy to read.
yeah.
I really like it's green. It's green and blue.
Okay.
It's green and blue, and it's a compilation from it's an editor from like a lot of different scholars, and Keener's in there. Um, but I love that one. Uh, yeah, this is
Discovering biblical equality, you're probably thinking
there you
of?
go.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
one,
Good one,
discovering
yeah.
biblical
It's
equality.
funny,
That
so I just wanna say, my wife is 47. I know exactly what you're talking about right now,
okay,
so
good,
we're navigating
good.
that.
Not all of
So,
the
yeah,
viewers will, but it's a
yeah.
real thing. Like
If
it
you're
is a
married, I
thing.
just wanna for you men out there, if
Yeah,
you're married and your wife is under the age of 42, I'm just gonna randomly pick that number,
yeah.
you're gonna find out. You'll know. It's great.
I was on the phone with Brian earlier today, and I was telling him I was in a conversation with someone a couple of days ago, and it was like a theological conversation, and I could not think of a word that I know, and I can't even tell you what it is. What it is now. I think it was like maybe it was like pneumatology or like some like word that I know, and like
Yeah.
I'm like I got
Yeah.
nothing. My brain,
That's funny.
no.
Yeah.
And I knew this would happen yesterday. I was like, "Oh, I need to pull these books off my shelf so I have them at the ready when Luke asks me because I will forget what their names are and the authors."
Yeah, yeah.
Here we go.
Well, it's okay. I've got the books for you. I'm gonna cover you. Uh, it's funny though, my wife will sometimes she'll like if she's having, the same situation happen and
Yeah,
I'm like, blah blah blah. And she'll like, oh well, I've got menopause. What's your excuse? And I'm like, I don't. You win.
right.
Okay, so let me just recommend a couple books.
Okay, great.
Maybe
Thanks.
you might have not read this one, but
Maybe.
I don't know if you
Yes.
have seen this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a double thumbs up.
Yeah. So How God Sees Women by Taryn Williams is, I think, probably the best overall cover everything in the issues. A lot of our so Mike Winger is somebody
Yeah.
who I'm a fan of in
I am
other
too.
areas. Yeah, like he's doing a good job with
I am too.
dismantling. But yeah, go ahead.
I was a fan before the dismantling and before the women's project. Like he's a
Y-
great guy. I
Yeah,
just
exactly.
disagree with him on the women's thing. And Taryn
Exactly.
Williams, that big whole blog thing about
Yeah.
like refuting point by point where
Yeah.
Winger's wrong. Yeah.
So that book is I think if you're going to pick one book, probably the best. Another, if you're looking for something really super small, Michael Bird has this book right here. I don't know if that'll. It's not focusing.
Seen that one.
Yeah. So look how small it is. This
Yeah,
is
that's
great.
great.
So this Zondervan put out a number of these. They put out one from the complementarian perspective. This is the egalitarian one, and then they have one from, I think it's from Tim Keller's. No, I think Tim Keller's wife wrote the one that's complementarian, and then there's another book that's like this. I would call it the "I'm not going to take a position." So
Yeah.
not great one,
Yeah. Right.
but Bird is a world class biblical scholar. So if you're
Yeah.
looking
He's
for
great.
exegesis, it's really good. And then obviously, oh, this is another one I want to mention. This is for the dorks out there that like theology. Icons of Christ is the best overall like biblical theology, but church history. And then one last thing I'm going to mention, and there will be a link in the description for the YouTube. Gary Hoag.
Oh,
This is a book that has nothing to do with females in leadership, Um, yeah, it's about Ephesus and money, actually.
And
But
it
he
totally
di
links with First
dismantled.
Timothy.
Yeah, what he did is,
Yes.
it's really kind of funny because I got this book and it's like an excursus. It's like this little like, hey, by the way, there's this interesting corresponding connection between this literature that we thought was written in the second, third century. Actually, it's a contemporary of Paul, and it lines up perfectly with the arguments that Paul's making in First Timothy 2. But you can actually get the 7-minute seminary version of it on YouTube where he just kind of lays out
Yes.
the case for it. So good.
Yeah. In fact,
Yeah.
for our women's mentoring, we have the women all watch that video. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like 2 thumbs up. It's
It's the
one of the
best
ones
7 minutes.
yeah, I
If you
know. I'm
don't
like,
watch 7 minutes about
it's
egalitarianism,
very,
good.
very good. Yeah. And there's a whole host of, I mean, I've got dozens of books, but I think these four right here are go-tos. And actually I'd say three because I would never in a million years tell anybody to buy this $400 million book. That's, one of them monologues, but you can watch the 7-minute seminary and it's very good.
Yes.
So, yeah, so those are, so there are, obviously in this podcast we're not dealing with the exegesis, but we can say, hey, these are
Do
scholars
it.
that do it for us, and some of the practical. So I guess I'm kind of curious, what are actually, let me ask you this. So like I was sharing how for the male listeners, there's definitely more men who listen to this podcast. But maybe having you on will change that. Females, come on, represent. Listen, I'm making podcasts. Okay. Uh, how can men, who are wanting to be advocates and to encourage female leaders, like what are some of the things that we can do? Because like it's almost like I do kind of feel guilty actually now that I'm like, I don't always go out get on the debates. Like, why should you have to be the one debating the dorks on these theology forums, like that are so arrogant and demeaning and oftentimes like assume that like there's no good arguments against it. I felt that when I was on that panel thing with you ladies,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I was like, oh man, it's so awkward being the only dude in this room with 4 billion women. But I also got talked into it because it's like I do want to be an advocate, and I've been an advocate for female leaders for a long time. What are some things that guys can do that would be like encouraging to you?
I mean, I know I needed champions, like my husband and Charles Bellow. Like, there's no way, um, I would have stepped into the fraction of the things that I have, if it wasn't for them. And, and so sometimes I think, men need to recognize they are just that one voice that can like cheer people on. I know in my mid-20s when I was considering pursuing an MDiv, like my pastor, he was the biggest champion, like, do it, do it. You like, how can we help pay for it? And and it's, I don't know if it's something that I would have done if he hadn't been so energetically for me.
Hmm.
Energetically for me taking steps that I was reluctant to take myself.
Yeah.
But was just my biggest cheerleader. And then of course, my husband, obviously. Um, yeah, and so sometimes it's just being a cheerleader. I'm for you. I see this in you. I think that's what's helped the most for me.
Hmm.
And then friends, like this is I'm sorry, this is on the female side of it, but like I don't know how I could be doing what I'm doing also now that I've stepped into the role if it wasn't for other women who are also doing it, and we're doing it together and alongside each other and can call each other up. And so I'm creating space for that, men, um encouraging that, creating space. Encourage, like, if you are a pastor or leader in a vineyard church and you've got a woman that you see God's hand on her, you see the gifting, and you don't even know what to do with her, like, en- encourage her, encourage her to go see what we're offering with the Women's Association. We've got various mentoring things, and I've always tell people it's not even so much about the content of the mentoring. it gives you an opportunity to form relationships with other women in similar roles and on a similar journey. The best thing that I've gotten out of the Women's Association
Mm,
isn't the content necessarily, which is great, but it's the relationships, it's the friendships, it's the, hey, I've got this issue in my church. How have you handled this before? I don't know, but I can call my other friend, and it's a supportive community of other women. So if you are a man in a leadership position, even if you don't know, first of all, like, figure it out. Just help women. Like, just figure it out. Like, even it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel weird. You're going to wonder, like, are people going to, what the Billy Graham rule? Like, you're
yeah.
you're going to have to wrestle with all these things. But at a minimum, the Women's Association is there to help.
Mm,
But I think men, like, the I I see egalitarian in name churches, but actually aren't raising up women. And it's not that they don't want to. I think they don't know how to. And then there's those cultural, like, what, like, to do the things that we would do to raise a man raising up another man, like to do those with a woman, that feels like they were touching on other boundaries, like, and
mhm.
so how do we do that? And so it's just easy to not,
Yeah,
instead of having the hard conversations to figure it out and
yeah,
prioritize
yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that does sound pretty, yeah, I think, it's, super applicable. I mean, even in our like, so personally, I think this is just my opinion, so you can leave your comments about how I'm wrong, but I think the Billy Graham rule is the dumbest thing in the entire universe, personally. Um, not that I think that you shouldn't use wisdom and their boundaries are
Of
good,
course.
but I don't think it means that I can't meet with a woman over lunch to talk about leadership. It's just there's other things there, and there's other folks who have done all the like have explained why that's ridiculous. If you disagree, fine. But it is unfortunate because like even in our last leadership meeting, we have a monthly leadership meeting, and we have all of our leaders, pastoral staff, leaders, volunteers. It's pretty much anybody gets to come. But somebody even was like, "Oh yeah, we need to make sure that." As I'm developing leaders, that I don't ever meet with females. And it was like, the Billy Graham rule. And I was like, okay, can I say something? And I just said, I was like, I don't think that that's at all helpful. And I didn't have time to unpack all the different reasons, but I mean, corporate America, you could never be like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't meet with another woman,
Yeah.
because over
Can't have
it's
this
just,
one-on-one with my direct
y-
report. you
yeah.
know?
And women are more than sex objects. That is part of my biggest
You
problem.
think?
Yeah, I mean, no, I've been told that is what I've been told. So,
Good.
yeah,
Good.
I just want to go on record.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a whole host of sorry. There's a whole host of reasons why, but yeah, but I mean, I think it gets down to that whole like, yeah, if you don't have pipelines that are equally available to females and leaders, then you're not going to develop leaders, and you're not going to
Yeah.
develop female,
Yeah.
voices and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, actually we because I'm hoping that this will become you'll be on this podcast again, and I think
Okay,
that might
good.
be just so you know
Good.
you're now
Because
committed.
you don't have enough women, so you
I
need 3.
you are the woman. Yeah, you are now. I used to have lots of back in the 19 or 2020 and 2021. I was able to get lots of women on, but I was going to say I think that would be a really good conversation is to if
Yeah.
to think about like what are some practical ways to develop female leaders with the potential of church planning and
Yeah.
raising up pastors and whatnot. But yeah, so those are some really great so you've been the senior pastor though at your church now for a couple years, right?
Yeah, we're coming on 3 here pretty soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Brian and you were co-leading, and then Brian transitioned out. You became senior pastor. I have watched your guys's live stream on YouTube multiple times, and you guys are your church is I would say it's very similar. I mean, you guys celebrate the Eucharist every week. You
Yeah.
guys are
Yeah.
Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are Christian. That's what I like
Yeah.
to describe that as, you guys are Christian.
Yeah. Yes, we are a Christian church. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Shots fired. What have been what because I think what I've discovered talking to Brian is that he has this like he has a sacramental charismatic tapestry
He does.
at work there, and it seems like watching your services, you guys do too. So you're kind of trying to like maintain this radical middle of some different spiritual formation. There's liturgical ish, but you guys also do like, hey, come forward. We're going to pray for the Holy Spirit to come right now. Why are you trying to do that? First of all, and then what are some of the challenges?
Okay, so in terms of like why we do communion, we call it communion, Eucharist, same thing. The reason why Brian and I both have felt a strong conviction to do that every week is I want to keep the gospel message front and center every single Sunday. I want people every Sunday to hear that Jesus has rescued and redeemed you, and without him we are lost in our sins, and with him we have the fullness of the kingdom of God at the cost of his blood, and we inherit this beautiful thing called the kingdom of God because of Jesus. And communion gives us the opportunity to intentionally say that week after week after week, different voices, to different people, sharing it. And then, obviously in our preaching, that's important as well, but it's tangible. We walk forward into the stations and receive the elements, and then we take the elements in different ways. Sometimes we do it, in groups, or sometimes we do it all together, or just, go, kind of pray on your own and receive it. So we kind of mix up the how, but the important thing is like you have to physically get up out of your seat, and there's a tangible, and there's a tasting, and there's a receiving, that I think can do so much more than, I shouldn't say so much more than any other part of the service. It does a unique thing in the
Mhm.
service that's very important.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So that's the in a nutshell. That's why it's
That's
important to.
that's the why. So that's why you're maintaining this, like, not just your typical charismatic evangelical church. What about challenges though? Have you? Because I mean, there's some, like when we we moved here 10 years ago, and I was already very sacramental, came from a church that celebrated weekly. I thought we had all the Bible clear. And we get here and they're like, how often do we celebrate communion? Once a year. And
Yeah,
I was
once
like,
a year,
like,
never.
yeah, like I had which is a lot of charismatic churches. It's
Yeah.
changed a lot in the vineyard, thank God. But one of the, we had all these objections like, oh, well, it becomes a ritual, and, oh, like, can't do it too much, it loses meaning, all that stuff. Have you had any other challenges with kind of, I guess, length of service, right? Because it adds,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just curious, if, is there been any
Yeah,
challenges
I
to that?
think I think when we first implement, because I mean we were part of the planting team of 2013. So 13 years. So we were almost a 13-year-old church. And so maybe the first couple of years we would just do it on the whim whenever it felt
Mm.
right. So maybe once or
Yeah,
twice a
yeah,
year. And then we got to where I'm like, oh, okay, let's do this once a month. And then I don't remember when it was with Brian and I leading. I don't know if it was like after we were co-leading or if we were in the transition. Anyway, at some point we just decided this needs to be every week. And at that time of change, then there were those questions. Is this just a religious ritual? Blah 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 blah. But I think it's just such a, that's now been 7-8 years. I think it's just such an ingrained part of our culture. I don't get pushback anymore.
yeah, yeah,
And I think because sometimes it does have to be explained to a guest, a friend. So someone, if they brought a friend, might be explaining things. But I think we talk about it so openly, and it's just such a part of our church culture that people in our church could then explain to visitors, like, this is why we do
yeah,
it. You can participate if you want to. You
yeah,
don't have to. Yeah.
yeah. That's good. I mean, that's the same here too. Yeah, I think that that's. I guess I'm kind of asking that just because there's a lot of listeners and viewers that are kind of exploring, this tapestry a little bit, and I'm having a lot of conversations with people about the process, because like the worst thing you can do is like overnight just start doing it. I think that
Yeah.
change takes time, and
Yeah.
but I guess my point is that it does take it. There is a tension there, right, where people are kind of working through it. You're going to have people asking questions, but I love your answer. I mean, I agree. It's 100%. Like, yeah, you get to talk about the gospel, the
Yeah.
cross every single time. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's so good. Yeah. Okay. So, what is it like being married to Brian? We need to know.
I love my husband. He's wonderful. Um,
That's it. That's all you got for us.
yeah, I love my husband. I love what he does.
Yeah.
I I say this regularly. So like, because people ask me like, oh, don't you miss him when he's gone? Because he travels. So if you haven't seen the previous podcast, viewer, with Brian Black, so he will go for extended times, overseas.
Yes. Riding, he rides lions, and he like takes care of elephants, and he's Mr. AI video now. It's like crazy.
Don't believe the AI parts.
Oh yeah, it's just
But he does like the lion part of every trip to South Africa. Anyway, so he typically goes to South Africa, several times a year, and
mhm.
that's 3 to 6 weeks. He'll generally go to Europe once a year, to South America. So he's gone quite a bit. And so people ask me like, hey, is that hard? I I love when I do get to go on trips with him. I try to at least once a year go on one of the ministry's trips with him. I love going on the trips with him, not because I love the trip, the ministry that we're doing, you know, people who live in
Mhm.
different cultures. Like I'm just not geared for it. Like
Yeah.
I don't love those things. I
Yeah.
love seeing my husband do what he was clearly made to do. Like
Mm.
I love what he does here, but like you put him on a plane across an ocean, and for some reason,
He comes alive.
yeah, he's just gifted.
Yeah.
Like God shows up in really beautiful ways. And so I genuinely like to go on the trips just as a spectator to watch my husband, because
Yeah.
I love seeing him light up. I
Oh,
love
that's
being able
cool.
to be witness to that, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
It's you and Brian are so similar to my wife and I. 'Cause my
Yeah.
wife is like, "Oh, yeah, she's you and her, need to become friends," 'cause she's totally the same way.
Yeah.
I finally, like, this last year, we were talking, and I was like, "Hey," um, like, because she is just a homebody. She loves being at home with her dogs. That's
Yeah.
like, she loves her dogs, and, I think she tolerates the rest of us. But I was like, "Can you, like" because I'm traveling, not quite as much as Brian, but travel a fair amount with, doing conferences and things, and I was like, can we just compromise? Like, just go with me one trip a year, just one." And she's
Yeah.
like, "Okay," because, yeah,
Yeah.
I think that it's just a lot of, yeah, going on those, trips, it is a lot of a lot of
Yeah.
social,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just, bandwidth and all that stuff too, so it's
Yeah.
funny hearing that, so
Ryan has
but
always been very good with honoring the introvert part of me, which I
yeah,
mean, I would say he's kind of 50-50 himself, introvert, extrovert. You wouldn't know it
yeah,
when he's out in public, but he does really need
yeah,
his down. But like when we're unless I'm like scheduled to speak or something, like if I'm with him on a ministry trip, like he's 100% like, you want to hang back at the hotel, you can, like he
yeah,
really.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas if I was just another team member on one of his trips, there's the expectation to do all the things. Like he's really
yeah.
kind.
Yeah.
About-
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, it's funny, that's why every time I talk to Brian, because we're texting more now, and,
yeah,
like, developing this friendship,
that's great.
but it's like, it's so funny because I just, like, I have we're so similar in so many ways, different in a lot of different ways, but then similar because I describe myself as I've become an omnivert. I used to be
Yeah.
hardcore extrovert, but now I'm like,
Yes.
they're like
The
Sunday
same way.
afternoons, I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna go crawl into my room, I'm gonna not be around anybody, and I wanna be by myself.
Yeah.
I'm no longer getting life from people. But I think that might be also too just, you I've been in church leadership for 28 years now. I'm not who I was when I was 20. I'm no longer that, that I'm a Enneagram 7, and I'm
Mm.
like, I'm a maturing 7. I'm growing up, I'm like, I'm getting there. Yeah. Okay. So, man, we covered so much good stuff. What's your favorite part about ministry right now?
Mm, I love preaching. I really do. I love preaching. I love I love getting better at it. I love like study. I love crafting it. And here's the irony, like I actually don't have time to craft the sermon the way I want to, like what pastor does, right? But
Yeah.
I'm bivocational. Like I have a whole other job and I pastor this church. And so usually my sermon prep consists of Saturday evening and Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And but I love it. I love it. I love it. It's my favorite
Yeah.
part. Yeah.
Well, correspondingly, what's the most challenging part of ministry?
I think it varies on the day, so I'll just answer
Mm,
for today. I think just like I love young people, like young adults, and seeing and sometimes I can see so much of myself at their age in them, and just like wanting them to flourish and wanting them to pursue and go after all the things, but like wishing I could just make them have the wisdom that I have now.
mm,
So just that frustration of young adults, like I can see I like it, like seeing the young adults at my church is what gives me the most hope and the most excitement for the future. And like I just want to get my hands on you and like teach you everything I know, and just that, so that just that pastoral patience of recognizing gifting and knowing that they just haven't had the time for the maturity, and so you're with them through the maturity, and being willing to say, no, you're being stupid, stop that, but also being able to be patient. And sometimes there's a fine line between those two. And yeah. Um, so maybe my answer now is both my favorite and most challenging part
mm.
is being able to pastor young adults really well. Like
Yeah.
I love it, but it has a challenge, and maybe it's because um my kids are that age now too. And so maybe that's part of why like my heart is so passionate about it. But that's not necessarily true because I didn't love kids ministry when my kids were little. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and so I really think it is like, yeah, it's like I just want so much for them, and I want the patient. I want to be the right like I want to pastor them well.
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
to do that well. Yeah.
I mean, couldn't it be connected to, when you look back at your history, like it sounded to me like one of the most transformative moments in your life was at
Yeah.
that age, right?
Absolutely.
Like that is the moment where you
Absolutely.
really solidified your faith and really solidified your calling and God
Absolutely.
started to like breathe on that, right? Yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
that age,
Absolutely right. I
yeah,
think I can see so much of myself in some of the young adults that we have at the
yeah,
church. It's like, how am I so lucky to have this number of amazing young adults? Like,
yeah,
like and feeling kind of like the fear of God to do this well, you know?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, because for me, it was like between 19 and 23, so formative for me.
Yeah.
Hearing you talk about that's actually kind of a good reminder. It's like, sometimes like, oh yeah, because we have a lot of young adults in our church too, and I maybe take that for granted. It's like
Yeah.
I need to probably lean more and yell at them more, and uh, you know,
Yeah.
tell them they're doing it all wrong. Just kidding. Yeah. Well, this has been such an interesting conversation. I would love to have you back on, if you'd be willing to, because I think there's a lot of, man, more connection to empowering women and maybe fleshing out some of those things. But right now, like if for, I'm going to just assume there's at least one, if not more, female leaders right now that God has been really, he's been doing work in, and it probably, those seeds have been planted for maybe years, and they're starting to wrestle with this idea that maybe God is inviting them into leadership. God is asking them to take that risk and to say yes. And so to those ladies, what would you want them to know? And then Additionally, like after they've said yes, what's the next step? What should they do?
Um, I would want them to know, um, it's to trust the nudge. You know what I mean? I think, um, I think because of the cultural hurdles and sometimes in our own churches, the hurdles, like we want to be sure that we're sure that we're sure that God has said, but sometimes like those affirmations come from the Lord as you step out and as you do. And so like for whatever level of, whether that's even just a voice more than even a role or function, like whatever level you have, like steward that well, not going for a certain outcome, that leave the outcome up to God, but like, and so I guess this applies to men or women, but like whatever amount of voice, whatever amount of gifting, whatever amount of scared, but I'm just going to do it anyway, you have, just like steward that well, and let God, the outcomes of it be up to God. And sometimes that does necessitate, unfortunately, in some of our churches, women having to advocate for themselves and speak up to leadership and say, I feel like I'm being overlooked here. I want to grow. I need help. This is how you could help. And those are very uncomfortable conversations, but sometimes they are necessary in some settings. Um, and if you don't know how to do that, by the way, I think I've said this like 5 times now, like the Women's Association is like actually
Yeah.
geared
What talk about
and
that for a minute. Yeah, so, like, if somebody wants to get in because like, to me, that would be the answer to the second question in a sense is like, "Hey, connect with women that can advocate for you and can then give
yeah,
you the pipeline." How do
yeah.
they where do they go to, like,
So
womenleader.com or like, what's the website?
no, you can go to the Vineyard USA website, vineyardusa.org, and then under the associations, there's the Women's Association page, and it shows all of our current offerings for. There's various mentoring groups that are either like, meet monthly kind of group online, or then there's also like workshop settings where that maybe there's a few hours over a weekend where there's a certain topic that they're deep diving into. Another option that we have through the Women's Association is an advocacy option. Like if you are in a situation where you're not being heard, like no one's advocating for me, so I got to figure out how to advocate for myself. We actually have support for that as well, to help navigate through those situations. And then back to your question of like, what should you do? Yes, the Women's Association is great, but also I just want to just put my hat in to say, get a formal education if you can, and if not, like learn read, get in theological cohorts within the vineyard, outside the vineyard, doesn't matter. Just get educated, like use your brain and grow it and learn how to utilize it. Because like I said, I think a lot of women end up accidentally in the roles and then they realize they didn't have the equipping that they wish they had had. Right. So I would say along the way, whether you end up in a formal role of leadership or not, never hurts anybody to pick up an NT Wright book and learn it, or ask a few other people, like one of the books that you suggested, like, let's read this together. Like if you can't find because of formal education is in terms of like getting a master of divinity or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, isn't always an option, but educate yourself, learn, grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. No, that's really, really helpful. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you, and like I said, just from a guy, a dude's perspective, I've really valued your contribution, your leadership. I think your voice has been really helpful, and I know that everything you shared today, I think, is going to be really helpful for women who are kind of like in this tension of trying to juggle these in trying to figure out like what does the next steps look like. So I hope that your voice will continue and your influence will still remain, and just appreciate you and taking the time to be on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, awesome.